Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast, where personal growth simply isn't enough. I'm your host, Mark Cordone, a positive psychology coach, a do-gooder from the island of misfit toys who founded the Joy Revolution. Each week I'll wrap with an extraordinary guest doing extraordinary things through their own revolutionary work to talk about the ups, downs, and all-arounds of life. It's my mission to provoke and empower you through increased joy and inspire you to spark your own revolution to change history for the better. Welcome to the most serious happiness podcast in this multiverse. Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast. So I wanted to take this to another level. This idea of neurology, neuroscience, neurons, and then this idea of living the good life, right? Where, you know, it's one thing to be like, okay, I can see how we're like our neurons. Mm-hmm. Talk about where, you know, because we started out by talking about eudaimonia, right?
Yeah.
Living a good life, living a life of virtue. It's almost like there's a skip there.
Yeah.
You know, and can you fill in that skip?
Yeah, and then that comes back down to that idea of dynamic balance. That you're looking for balance, understanding that you're gonna never be in perfect balance, and that you're actually built to do that. Mm-hmm. And that acceptance of who you are. And this kind of comes back to my conversations that I've had with the Tibetan monks, where the idea of enlightenment is that you understand who you are at a perfect level. I have them now at Emory. We have 6 Tibetan monastics on campus at any given time. And they take my intro neuroscience class. Well, why would they be interested in neuroscience other than they're very interested in aspects of consciousness and things like that? But what I try and help them realize is that studying how your brain works, how you operate, like that can be part of your path to enlightenment. Understanding what the neurons are doing in your head, like that becomes part of understanding who it is that you are. Understanding, like being able to understand those motivations that you have, like those are all neural networks to me. So like as you gain this understanding of, oh, this is why my brain thinks the way it does. Another thing that Julio told me was, the human brain is the only thing that's studying itself. Right. So when my students are sitting in class, I'm constantly reminding them, keep in mind, like your brain is literally studying itself right now. It's trying to figure out how it works. It's a super introspective process, even though you're taking a basic neuroscience course. You're learning the biology, the physics, the chemistry of how you come together. But it's ultimately an introspective process because it's the brain studying itself. So this is part of that
absolutely
path
insane,
of
man.
Right? So for me, neuroscience really is an enlightening kind of process. It's why I think it's worth studying.
I absolutely love that, and I think rather than fighting with folks who would go out there and be like, consciousness is not about the head space. It's not about those sort of things. It's about, it's about awareness. I think you're hitting the tip of the iceberg there, but I'd love you to talk more about that.
Tell that to your dad. Right? Yeah. It's a physical thing. Yeah. Alzheimer's disease, it's destroying the brain tissue, and it's altering the personality. It's altering who he is.
And what his reality is.
Tough. Yeah. Your reality is just a construction of your mind, right? Yeah. And when your mind is altered, the physical structures that support your mind is altered, your reality is altered. So again, and we keep coming back to Buddhism, which I feel like I'm a huge proponent of Buddhism. I'm not Buddhist, but I love their philosophy. You never know that from talking to me. But like the acceptance of that as, okay, things are changing. Like, well, your brain is constantly, as we're speaking right now, there's little neurons in your head that are connecting to each other and forming the memories of what we just talked about, right?
Absolutely.
So you're constantly in a state of change. That's a good thing, because that means it's never too late to change who you are. But when we get into pathology like Alzheimer's, that's a double-edged sword. Now your dad's brain is changing in ways that it's really important just to accept and go with the flow. I love your approach to it as a celebration of, all the things that he's done in life, all the memories he's created. Like, those memories are not gone. They're in you now. Like, his neural network of those memories are your neural networks of those memories now, right?
Yeah.
So you have a little piece of him represented in your brain, and that's not going to go away, anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you about before you make me cry here. Is this idea of how are these neural networks passed intergenerationally? And I've definitely heard it from the standpoint of stress in the neural networks are passed intergenerationally. And it sounds like that's something that you believe in.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a really exploding field, this epigenetic movement where we're looking at these acquired traits that you're and that's still very little understood. We're just starting to understand how these things get passed down. But we've known for a really long time that there's a really strong genetic basis to behavior. It's why we have, like Dr. Palmer here, one of our newer hires, he's a behavioral geneticist. What's he doing in a psych department? Well, we have this progression from the environment plus the genes. They express and turn into proteins, which turns into neural networks, which ultimately turns into behavior. And so
I love how multidisciplinary it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I always tell a student, like if you get bored in any one thing, neuroscience is the place for you. It's this combination of like, you got to know a little bit of biology, physics, chemistry, psychology,
it's awesome.
Like history, genetic, like all of these things are coming together because, we're just talking about what makes you you.
Yeah.
So of course that's going to be interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Because you're interdisciplinary, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you know this. I was
you were MBB. Yeah.
I was MBB while I was here, which is neuroscience, behavior, biology.
Yeah.
And there was nothing like it.
Yeah.
There absolutely was nothing like it. And there was something that I remember. It was actually Dr. Neil who said it, and I saw the all-star Rowan coming in here.
Yeah, he's can you believe this is his last year? He's retiring.
Oh wow, huge!
But such a huge contribution to Emory.
Huge. I remember he said before we go into the biology of all of this, understand that there's a difference between the brain and the mind. Now, for you, how do you make that distinction?
For me, I separate that into the difference between observable truths and revealed truths. Okay. So that's where the Tibetan Buddhism comes in with this philosophy that the mind is something that can be separated. For me, functionally here on Earth, I don't distinguish between the two. I consider that above my pay grade.
Let's give him a
my
call.
Pay grade is actually not that high. So.
Let's give him. Let's pick up the bat phone. Let's see what's going on.
We can talk to His Holiness.
What he thinks about it. Now, I know that you were talking about in grad school and sort of the your life in grad school, but you also had kids when you were in grad school.
Yeah.
And so becoming a father now, and sort of functionally, what does all of this look like? Neurons either firing or not. What does all of this look like? Eudaimonia, what does all of this look like in terms of becoming a father?
People are going to think I'm crazy, but people are going to know that I'm crazy. But I use this so much in my parenting. all of the psychological training that I've had, looking at how their minds develop, like identifying what does their vision of excellence look like right now. Like this is something that my wife and I are talking about a lot, where we have like quarterly meetings where we sit down and
you and your wife,
yeah,
and your kids too.
We meet with them separately.
Okay.
And
oh my God, you guys are like stoics.
You know, I have an amazing relationship with my kids because
Sure.
They're such an important part of my life.
Yeah.
But I want them to reach their potential, and this is where we get into the eustress versus distress, making sure they have enough stress and challenges in their life. Yeah. I had a lot in my life, but a lot of that was distress, and didn't make me a better person per se. So making sure they have enough challenges, but also finding out what is work and play to them. So we did, it was very important for my wife and I that our kids make the world a better place, right? It has to be a better place because they're in it, right? And so what activities are they gonna find that are work and play, they know that their goal in life is to make the world a better place. That's like, they understand that's one of their purposes for being on this earth.
Can they articulate it at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they know, so we try and find things that are going to be consistent with their internal drives and motivations that are going to spark that change and growth in them. And I think it's going to be like we find activities like Special Olympics, for instance. So they're as they're going through, they're both really into athletics. So my daughter's a big rock climber. My son plays tennis, and those are activities that we can use for good through things like Special Olympics. So
Sure.
Volunteering, for me, Special Olympics, that's the purest form of sport. So when you volunteer, you just can't walk away unchanged.
Yeah.
I mean, I like miss stuff every time I just think about these athletes, like running across the line, training as hard as they do, but yet like making sure their friends finish ahead of them, like holding hands crossed. That's not like a one-off thing. That's like every Special Olympics. Yeah. So to see that as like the purest form of sport, and to have that be part of their vision of excellence, saying, oh, this is what it means to compete. Look at this. Sure. And then, but also being able to contribute to that population and saying, all right, yeah, we'll volunteer at the events or whatever. That's a way they can make change at where they are now, and hopefully they'll continue on. But it's about like, what is that vision of excellence going to be for my son or my daughter?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you already talked about it. Your daughter is huge rock climbing. Son plays tennis, but is also kinesthetic.
Synesthetic. Yes.
Synesthetic.
Yeah. He's definitely kinesthetic.
Yeah, kinesthetic. I was like, wait.
That's motor learning.
Yeah.
The way we found this out was so funny because I had been lecturing. So synesthesia is a genetic, it's not really a condition. It's an alternative way of developing where your sensory systems wire up in cross-modal fashion, meaning that one sensory system activates the other at the same time. So in my son's version of it, he sees auras, he attaches emotions and colors. And so I had been lecturing on this in my neuroscience class because it's super interesting. And my wife was driving him home from school and asking about his day, and it somehow came up that he was grouping his friends by color. And my wife's first instinct was like, "Oh dear God, what have we done?" and she
team
was like,
meeting at 4 o'clock. Team meeting at 4 o'clock.
It's like, what do you mean by that? Like trying to probe it. He's like, oh, I have like my brown friends.
Yeah,
I was like, oh no. Where did this go off the rails? And it said, oh, I have green friends and blue friends. And it was like, that's weird. And then, so we started getting into it. And then I came home and we had this whole conversation about it. And I did a synesthesia test, as, a psychologist would. And sure enough, like he's got this really amazing way of perceiving the world. His reality is so much different than yours and mine because it has all of this extra color added to it all the time.
So he can see emotions?
Yeah, and it was so interesting to watch him develop because when he was little, we identified it when he was around 7-ish, and his friends would stay the same color. And that was kind of based on their general personality type. And as he started to grow, you could actually see him starting to understand emotions at deeper and deeper levels. And now and so like our family members would always shift our colors depending on what we were feeling. He had a good beat on us.
Yeah.
But as he started to develop, his friends started to turn different colors based on their current emotions. So it was like this dynamic change in emotions.
Sure.
So it's really cool to see that progression in terms of the colors that he was experiencing. The colors for each emotion stayed the same, but he started to be aware that his friends were going through these emotional changes. Okay.
So again, completely fascinating. And even by the way that you're talking about this, I see some people talking about this from the standpoint of, oh, well, those are the helpers or those are the special abilities that, from a spiritual standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're talking about, well, the way the neural grouping is, right? And so still you're saying that it's cross-wired.
Yeah. But he is super empathetic and actually a hell of a poker player too.
Because that's not fair though. He can see what everyone's got.
It's, again, crazy things that psychologists do. Like I literally taught him to add and subtract using blackjack.
That's amazing. That's Father of the Year right there stuff.
Oh, I do crazy stuff with my kids.
Well, I wanted to throw this out with the synesthesia thing for a second.
Yeah.
I remember before I left Emory, and I think you were just telling me about it, and if you don't mind sharing the story, like you'd show pictures of celebrities, I think, to him.
Yeah.
And like without going too wild on things, or maybe some of the I don't want to say positive versus negative emotions, but maybe some of the more joyous emotions, right?
Yeah.
What were some of the people he was identifying as having those joyous, ecstatic, happy emotions?
So obviously we went through all the Star Wars characters.
Okay, I gotta know this.
So when I showed him Darth Maul, he actually started laughing. And he's like, Darth Maul is the only one that actually matches, like his color matches his emotion.
Oh, wow.
And so like, but the most interesting one he had was Jesus. And these are moments where my wife and I just look at each other like this is spooky. He said, Jesus, he just started laughing to himself. And he said, Jesus has all of the colors of the rainbow except for purple, which is weird because as a good Catholic, purple is like the royal color.
Yeah.
Like that's the one, if anything, if it was just about the colors, that's the one you would associate, right?
Sure.
The royal. But for him, purple means depression. So it's like, and again, he, as far as I know, he's never met Jesus, but, and we're not like super religious or anything like that. It's like the idea of what Jesus meant to him in his child. And this is like age 7.
So
right?
Insane.
So it's like this weird insight of like, man, this little kid, his idea of Jesus is that Jesus experiences all of the emotions, like sadness, everything except for depression, like because he's got hope, right?
Yeah,
that he doesn't give it. He's like the ultimate symbol of hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how crazy is that a 7-year-old like has that insight?
It's pretty damn. It's pretty damn. And also it's absolutely amazing the fact that it still comes back to neural wiring of things.
Yeah.
I want to go a little bit into the woo stuff right now because I know a lot of people and you don't have to speak for or against it, but a lot of people will be like, I can see helpers around you, Mark, or I can see this. I can see that your halo, or I can see a big chakra above your head. Yeah. Is that a type of cross wiring? Is that a type of like what from your standpoint is it?
That could very well be a version of synesthesia. This is pretty rare. Don't quote me on this. I think it's about 1 in 1,000 individuals, but that's not nothing.
Okay.
So you could easily see how people who aren't trained in neuroscience or psychology would look at this and say, "Oh, this person sees auras." Because he does see auras. Like that's the way to describe what he's seeing. But from my perspective, I know that it has a neural basis.
Okay.
So I don't. But he is very empathetic. He actually was terrified of Star Wars. Like he initially very scared of lots of different movies. He was always super sensitive, and he was always like the teachers would always say, "Man, he is like such a good friend to everybody. Like he will stick up for people. I'm just so proud of him." But I think a lot of those qualities are coming from his ability to experience emotions at 2 different levels at the same time, and it just amplifies everything. So if he sees something, he's naturally driven to help. So I think part of his vision of excellence is certainly going to be about helping people that are suffering.
Now this is completely a haywire question, but in trying to get to your questioning route, my Facebook came up, and so one of the things that came up on my Facebook was like a neurohacking convention, and you know how this new it's kind of fad of you can hack into systems and crosswire and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Can we either neural hack, or do you see it possible in the future for us to be able to train ourselves to do what your son has?
Yeah, so I'll have to see. I don't know if what you're talking about is this technology called TMS, transmagnetic cranial stimulation.
Okay.
So that's where you pass either a magnetic current, or if you're crazy, you do it with sponges and a 9-volt battery. Just for your audience, Kazama says, "Do not do that." never do that.
This is the first podcast. I'm gonna have to start out with a warning. Do not put sponges.
Do not try this at home if that isn't. I can't believe we have to say this, but don't get some sponges wet and strap them to your head and zap yourself. But the idea is that you're stimulating these areas of the brain. But I'll have to look that up. I don't know if they've been able to induce synesthesia from it. I know they've induced savantism.
Really?
So that kind of Rain Man stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Where you can tell like how many toothpicks were dropped. Or,
absolutely.
So this guy Snyder is like a top researcher in this field, and has written a lot about like this savant skills, which I'm super interested in.
Hey it's Mark. I hope you're digging the Golden Mike podcast. If you have or are just starting your own revolution fueled by joy, there's a site I created for you. If you, like me, believe that personal growth is simply not enough, if you, like me, are committed to changing history for the better in both micro and macro ways, check out joyrevolution.com. In there, you'll find an archive of our over 200 Golden Mike Live Facebook shows, and of course, our podcast that you're currently listening to. Check out the blogs highlighting how positive psychology and joy theory apply to your everyday life. There's even some cool clips from our Joy Revolution course geared towards influencers, speakers, writers, and change agents. It's all there. Go to joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Let's get back to the episode.
Well, my take on it was this, if you want to call it technology, but this technology used to be used to, almost dull down like a hyperactive, like the Phineas Gage type of folks, right?
Yeah.
And if it can be used in a primitive way like that, with sophistication, could it be used to stimulate?
To increase empathy, things like that. Those structures are pretty deep in terms of empathy, so they're hard to get to. Like deep in terms of like physically deep in the brain.
Okay. So I'm taking a turkey baster with the.
They're tough to get to. But right now we're doing deep brain stimulation even at Emory. Helen Mayberg is one of the premier researchers here that's doing that to combat depression. Mm-hmm. So dropping in these electrodes, and we use it for originally started in Parkinson's disease. Yeah. Amazing effects with this. So, we're treatment-resistant depression where nothing else is working. You can have this pretty severe surgery where you're basically dropping like a pacemaker type device into the white matter of the frontal lobes, and it's hitting this junction where it's stimulating these neural networks that alleviates depression in really striking ways. So
that's absolutely wild.
So you can imagine this would not be something that you would do recreationally or just like, oh, I want more empathy. The way to do that is more holistically, which I think we haven't touched on that, but
that's where we're going to go.
Very helpful to is like how would you get this done without something drastic like
without
surgery.
A muse band that goes deep into the brain.
And this is something where I worked with this Goodwill Guides. They're a fly fishing outfit that's helping veterans who suffer from PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. And what they found was that for some folks, fly fishing was working better than the 40 pills a day they were taking and washing it down with a fifth of Jack Daniels. It's like, and for them, I heard many of them say, fly fishing is my drug now. Why does that work? Well, you have all of these neurotransmitters that are that need to be balanced, and you take one pill, you affect one neurotransmitter, you pull everything else out of whack. So how do you get this holistic balance? Well, sometimes the brain has this ability through these activities to help heal itself over time. And remember, I said your brain is always changing. So like helping itself rewire itself in very productive ways. Now, that's not going to work for everybody.
Right. Like if the executive functioning part has been damaged.
Yeah. There is no golden pill. There is no golden treatment that's going to work for everybody. But for some individuals, this is a very holistic, powerful way of impacting their
so
mental
you've
health.
Seen it work. You've seen it work yourself.
Yeah.
And over how long of a period of time have you, someone picks up the fly gear?
Yeah.
And then.
So the guys that I've worked with, a period of a year, sometimes 2 years. It's a gradual process, so it's hard to say like when it's happening. But for sure, it's been very effective for some of them. Not everybody.
And what has this done for you? Because it can't just be from going from PTSD to zero. You know, like there's got to be some, there's got to be continual growth that's always happening, and so there's got to be some shaping that's going on as a result of for yourself.
Yeah. Well, you mean me personally?
Yeah, in terms of
my fly fishing. I mean, it's my happy place. I'm actually going a little twitchy right now because I haven't been able to fish in over a month. The weather's been
okay,
so
thank
bad.
you. I thought it was me today.
But for me, fly fishing is a moving meditation. It's like the feeling of having a fly rod in your hand and making a controlled cast, and there's a rhythm to it. And those rhythms for me are super soothing. It's almost always happening in beautiful locations. So you're surrounded, you're in nature, you're feeling more a part of the universe when you're doing it, and you're making these amazing casts. It's just like the way it flows out of the rod. It's just again, for me, it's like just a thing of beauty.
Yeah. I don't know if you, I mean, it definitely sounds like there's some peak states that you reach there.
Yeah.
But it definitely sounds like, I believe it's theta states. When you kind of get into these, like, you're feeling like a flow-like state, like high levels of inspiration. I know runners get it. For me, the moving meditation is roller derby. You know, it's not necessarily the contact, but just when I put on a set of headphones,
you do your best thinking,
and
right?
then you just go around in circles. Yeah, and it's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
I think this has been absolutely amazing. I know we haven't seen each other in a couple years. Yeah. What have I missed? That before we go into the contest and I start asking you about your embodiment of joy.
Joy, I'm ready for that.
Okay,
I think since you last saw me, I struggled a lot with that imposter syndrome. But now I've got so much data saying that I can help my students reach their enormous potential, and I'm much more confident in my ability to help students like get to the next level. I almost don't really like the term reaching your potential, because that implies like some kind of static thing.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Potential is not a static thing. It's a moving thing.
Absolutely.
So,
because once you reach it,
dynamic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're always changing and growing. So it's like I don't like to say that you never reach your potential.
Yeah.
You're always at your potential. It's just where that is moving. But so that's different in me, I would say. From how long has it been? It's been at least 3 years.
It's been 4 years, bro. I got gray hairs now, man. So yeah.
Well, at least you have hair. I'm getting less and less by the day. But,
that's why I turn it red. Yeah.
But and then the Emory Tibetan Science Initiative has been a big part of my life. Like kind of being a part of His Holiness's 100-year vision of training monks not only in their normal Buddhist and philosophical training, their study of consciousness, but also now incorporating the science, the STEM, into it, and being someone who gets to play this really tiny role of like setting these monks up to be teachers in STEM and designing the curriculum that's going to be spread out to all of these different monasteries. And the things I've learned from them about, like, it's so funny. What makes a great monk is the same thing that makes a great scientist. It's like this desire to make the world a better place, right? Through your endeavors, right? But they also have this really amazing system of logic. So they the way they attack their philosophical problems. I don't know if you've ever seen Tibetan debate.
No.
It's a very athletic process. I mean, they're jumping around, they're trying to, it's like a chess match between you and the defender. I actually did it with my kids when I got back. It was amazing. So we were looking at the question I posed was, what's the best personality trait? And my son So my daughter was the defender, and she said it's compassion. And my son said, no, it's perseverance. And then we had a whole debate about, and dancing around, jumping up and down. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
So that's that ability to follow these different logical lines is key. This attention for detail and learn information. The monks are some of my best students because they're always challenging you on what you say in a good way, in a respectful way. But what about this? What about this case? What about this? And so like you put all of those things together, and there's so much overlap in a quality, high-level monastic versus an amazing scientist.
That's really amazing because, a lot of people are really bashing. Well, education has really become something where it's meant to indoctrinate and blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But you still have in its purest form, almost the circle with the professor holding the apple and saying, is it here or is it not? You know what I mean? Like, you know, being and having those kind of debates. Yeah. And also at the same time, I consider it great education when everyone is learning and everybody is teaching,
and you're generating new ideas all the time.
Absolutely.
And that's for sure the best part about being at Emory is, and I bet you miss this about Emory too, is like having such a diverse group that has different ideas. For me, it's a biological argument for diversity. It's like we've got this bell-shaped curve, right? That no species on Earth ever benefits by bottlenecking itself, right? Yep. That every species wants to hold as much diversity in its population as possible, because that's a strong population that can deal with all kinds of dynamic changes in the environment, right?
Absolutely.
New pressures. So for Emory, we have this One Emory initiative right now where we're trying to increase diversity. And for me, that's a very biological argument. It's like the more ideas we have here, the stronger Emory is.
It's almost like community resilience is created.
It's not a political or ethical, those are fair debates to have as well.
Sure.
I'm not knocking those arguments. But just from a biological standpoint, diversity is so important. And this is, again, one of the things I love about being at Emory is being able to encourage this kind of inclusivity and diversity and frame it in this way and generate new knowledge from that diversity. Amazing.
And when you do frame it from that standpoint, do you use Tibetan debate style with the other administrators?
Dying to incorporate this debate style into my teaching because it's such an effective way to learn. It's emotional, so it has you're getting that extra in additional network building, the neural network building. It's adding
so
in the
awesome.
emotion.
Yeah.
But I just love it. I'll have to show you a video of it later. But
absolutely,
I was able to participate in it myself with debating different theories of emotion with the monks when I was in India. It was so much fun.
So when you feel like you're losing, do you just judo chop them?
No, people will come and you have an audience and you'll sway the audience, so people will come onto your side if you're winning.
Oh my gosh, that is so rad!
And then if you're losing, they'll go away and jump sides on you.
Oh my gosh, that is so rad!
If someone can't help, but they have a great point, sometimes they'll jump in and they'll kneel right beside you and they'll chime in. And say,
oh my gosh, what about this? So rad. That is so rad.
And then they do this amazing thing. I don't know if the mic will pick it up. When they make a great point, they'll clap their hand and they'll go, sa. And that's I got you.
That is
amazing. We need more of this.
We do need more of this. And so given that, I want to go into how you embody joy. If you're ready for that.
Oh, I am ready.
Okay, so the world has been wondering. The world has been wondering how the number one rated in ratemyprofessor.com and most rated.
It's not the number. It's not the highest rated. It's the most rated.
The most rated.
As a strong believer in statistics, I'll take that.
The quantity,
sample size.
The sample size was huge. But the world has been waiting for this. How Andy, you really go and embody this idea of joy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out the statement, and I would love for you to complete it in as short or as long of prose as you want. So let's start this one out with joy. And joy looks like.
So for me, this embodiment of joy comes down to this arousal of the system, right? So it's different than contentment. So this is one of the things I love about this question. Is like there's all these theories about how you process emotion, and the one that I love is this somatic marker hypothesis, where like it's this combination of you feeling the emotion with your body, but also like analyzing it with your brain, and the two kind of come together, where you're getting this body feel plus the brain.
Give me an example of what that would look like in real life.
So joy is, for me, an arousing state. Like your heart rate is going to go
Gotcha.
up. And so activation of the sympathetic, your pupils are going to dilate. Like all of these things are associated with joy. It's the arousal of your body. And that's different, I think, than contentment.
Sure.
So I think some people mistake joy for contentment.
Sure.
Contentment is the exact opposite for me. From a physiological state, it's your heart slowing down.
Absolutely.
You're feeling calm. I think your last guest talked about like being on a couch and having like curling up in a nice warm blanket.
Yeah.
And I love that idea. But for me, that would be contentment, not joy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So
it does.
when I think about like what does joy look like for me, I'm going to be thinking about your body redlining. Like joy for me is like your body's just like so excited and moving, and like sparking that change and growth. That's for me. That's joy. So what does it look like? It looks like something new. It looks like it may be something familiar, but looked at in a way that I never saw it before.
Oh,
so
wow.
Oftentimes that's joy for me, is when I see the same thing, but all of a sudden I'm looking at it from a completely different perspective and saying, whoa, that's not what I thought it was at all.
So it's an aha, it's a mind blown.
Yeah, it's a eureka kind of thing.
It's a fly fishing,
or
type of thing.
Yeah. So for me, it's like anything it's going to look new.
Amazing.
Even if it's old.
Awesome.
So that would be what joy looks like for me, is something new a new discovery that I've never seen it that way.
Amazing. Right. Joy sounds like
it's again like it's an arousal. So for me, joy sounds like let's go.
I've never heard someone answer it like this.
That's what joy sounds like. Let's go.
Let's do this, baby.
Let's do this.
I love it. I love it.
That's what joy sounds like for me.
Okay. Joy feels like.
So we already talked about this idea of redlining. Mm-hmm. It's so again, it's those like butterflies. It's the like. I don't want to say adrenaline because it's not quite that, but it feels arousing, like you can't sit still. It's sometimes electric.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I think I like that term.
I love it. Joy tastes like.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to bring it back to change and growth. It tastes like something new. It's something that you never tried before. I don't know. What are some foods that you've tried that you like tasted for the first time? Is there something that you remember tasting where you're just like, I can't believe I got to try this?
There's a particular type. There's a particular type of fish, right? I can't remember what it was, and then there was
bagong.
Spam with subi, anything with hot dogs in it. No, but I think I think I'm thinking back to sort of tasting something and being like, making that like Folgers crystal face in the commercial. What about you?
Well, so I had an experience. I took my son and my family to Alaska, and my son loves crab, but he's never had real fresh crab before. So he never knew, age 12, he never knew what real crab tasted like, right out of the water. And I got him super fresh king crab and watching him taste it for the first time, it was like I was reliving the first time I got to taste it. And his eyes just lit up, and it was like, okay, like, and on one hand, like, I'm so glad I tasted this, but on the other hand, like, screw you, because now anything else I eat is not going to taste like,
Did he have one of these, like...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was totally just like eyes wide open, just
the
like...
back straightens up.
What is this? So, like, for me, that would be what joy tastes like. It's like something that maybe you've never tried before, and you're tasting it. And for as a neuroscientist, I'd like to point out that smell and taste intricately linked. So the next question, what does it smell like? It's going to have the same answer. It's 80% of taste is smell, right? So
it absolutely is. And you are the first guest to not say it smells like Teen Spirit. So thank you.
It doesn't, unless you've never smelled Teen Spirit.
Unless you've never smelled
and it's
Teen
like
Spirit.
Really amazing. I don't know. I can't.
That's amazing. The somatic marker hypothesis used to answer what joy is and how it's embodied. Absolutely amazing. I wouldn't expect anything else from Andy. Again, rated as the #1 professor on ratemyprofessor.com. Proud sponsors of the Joy.
Hopefully they are now. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Joy revolutions, right? And so you told us what joy is. Now, a revolution can be an inner revolution, and that eureka on the inside.
Yeah.
Or it could be the revolution that you talked about when you first went to the Alzheimer's home and you were like, let's do something about this.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So for you, what does your joy revolution look like?
Yeah, it's for me, it's really about empowering students and opening this new world that they've never seen before. It's showing them what a big world we actually live in, and showing them an appreciation that, like, what you think is reality is not reality. That we have very limited senses, and the universe is huge, and we can only capture a small part of that. So encouraging them to go out and explore that and find their own vision of excellence, I would say that is what my joy revolution is. That's what gets me up in the morning, is knowing every day I'm going to have a conversation with a student that is going to help put them on their path somehow, that I get to be a tiny little part of that ripple, and that's, I think, what good teachers really, that's why we do what we do. And I am not a master teacher by any means, but I love getting to play that small part in their life, and watching them become successful. It's the same way you feel about, your kid, right?
Yeah.
It's their successes become your successes while not living vicariously through them.
Absolutely.
And I really do treat my students like I treat my own kids. I want the same things across the board.
So do you and your wife have powwows over every single student?
Yeah, we have quarterly reports.
Quarterly reports over every student.
Yeah, no, But I do like to be able to sit down one-on-one with my students and talk through this process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, we've got really amazing students on the Emory campus that are just absolutely inspiring. So like being able to feed off of that, that keeps my joy revolution going, you know, and especially hearing back from them years later about, I did this and I still think about this class and, you know, that kind of stuff. There's nothing better for that than that for me. Yeah.
Well, as someone who was someone who worked here for a long period of time, you are one of you're a beacon in a whole place of diamonds, you know, like in a whole place of beacons. It's not just Andy here at Emory, but
I'm like a piece of coal.
I don't. That's bullshit. You made me curse. That's bullshit. But I have.
I'm just learning.
And I've had the opportunity to connect with multiple students, and to have served in the capacity of doing some flourishing work while I was here.
Yeah, it was such an important program.
Yeah, and to see the students light up when they scored Andy Kazama, and I'm sitting here with Andy, and he's talking about his imposter syndrome. I mean, isn't it just so funny how life is a bunch of neurons, either firing or not? You know, so Andy, you've said enough. You told me, you told me that you didn't think you'd have anything to say, and look at this. There's smoke coming out of my road right now. I don't think I have any. I barely have any more space for our stuff. So. All of Andy's work, even his, I'm going to put the not the Joy Revolution. I'm going to put the lecture that he gave a few years ago up on the website. You've said enough. I want to always thank you for being consistent, and in times when just as one person to another, I never expected, in a moment of loneliness for someone to call or text. You did. I'll never forget that, man.
Well, you were the one who convinced me to do that Good Life lecture in the first place. I don't know if you remember that. But I was terrified to do it and felt supremely unqualified to do it.
I forgot.
And that lecture changed. I've received so many emails that lecture made a big impact on their life, and I would have never had the guts to do it if it wasn't for you.
Wow. You packed the house that day.
You got a lot out of it, and of course, it made me think about my life in a new way.
Yeah.
And assess what kinds of things are important for me. Assess how I raise my kids and how I encourage my students to find that vision of excellence. And that would have never happened without you. So, thank you.
Look at the love fest that's going on. So before we do more of this, we have more interviews, more good stuff. I teach about eudaimonia on thejoyrevolution.com. Just go there. We've got plenty of things. But even more than that, Andy, I want to thank you again for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. For your sake, for my sake, for crap's sake, for our sake, I want you to start your joy revolution. And don't forget to revolt, remember, in love, in light, in shadows, and in joy. This has been the Joy Revolution Podcast. We're out.
I hope you enjoyed the Golden Mike Podcast. There's more good stuff coming your way. But until the next episode, let's stay in touch, yes? Find us on Instagram as The Joy Rev, or communicate with like-minded revolutionaries in our Facebook group. Search The Joy Revolution Underground. And of course, don't forget to check out the classes, articles, blogs, and some serious fun at joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Now, until then, what will you do to change history for the better. Let's go out and play, shall we? Press start to begin.